My Uber driver the other day, his name is Alan, very interesting man. He is a former truck driver. He is in his early 70s. He does not have a house. He works part-time doing Uber. He stays with a friend while he is trying to find somewhere to satisfy his housing needs. He went through a very long, very bitter divorce that lasted several years. And I asked Alan, I had the opportunity, I asked him, I said, oh, now in the middle of this is something phenomenal. In the middle of his divorce, he came to know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior in his late 60s. The majority of people who become Christians in the U.S. become Christian before the age of 18. It's about 90% of people who become Christian before the age of 18. He came to Christ at about 68. So I asked him, I said, how are you doing with forgiveness? And the whole relationship with the ex-wife, now it's about money. Yeah, the kids, they despise her. They're grown now, but they despise what she put the family through. And he said he did. It was about a year ago. He went to a Bible study and he asked the question, can I forgive someone and still resent them? He said, and as I asked the question, I knew what the answer was. No, I can't. And God worked on his heart so that he was able to forgive his ex-wife. He genuinely cares about her. There's no projection on them getting back together. But when I asked him what I could pray for him, his number one thing was salvation for his ex-wife, ahead of finding a house for himself. He said that in his life, at this point in his life, without having a house, being divorced, barely having any money, he is the happiest he has ever been. Really neat story. Right. It's a God thing. It's a God thing. Now, we'll be in Hosea chapters 1 and 3 this morning. This is the first time. Normally when we do 2 chapters, we do 2 consecutive chapters. But this time we want to tell the story of Hosea and Gomar, which is rather unique within the Bible. The word of the Lord that came to Hosea, son of Beeri, during the reigns of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and during the reign of Jeroboam, son of Jehoash, king of Israel. Now what this is telling us, so if we know the history of the Old Testament to some extent, there is the period of time called the divided monarchy, where Israel is split in two. The northern kingdom is called Israel, the southern kingdom is called Judah. The northern kingdom gets wiped out first by the Babylonians, or the Assyrians who become the Babylonians. Hosea will be prophesying in the northern kingdom. And he is prophesying during a period of time that's quite prosperous. The economy is doing well, spirituality is not. And so that is the basis of his message. And Hosea is one of these guys who God likes to demonstrate his message to the Israelites through Hosea's life. Hosea, as a name, means salvation. So it's the same root if you know Joshua or Yeshua, which is also Jesus. He saves. Hosea, it's the same root, it means salvation. When the Lord began to speak through Hosea, the Lord said to him, "Go marry a promiscuous woman and have children with her." Okay. NIV is being too polite in that translation. King James, what do you have, George? Harlot? All right. Harlot. Prostitute. Go marry a prostitute and have children with her. Okay, there's a lot to unpack in that. First off, we have to remember the period of time that we're dealing with. This is a period of time, and these are people who are very much plugged into their community where everyone knows everything about everyone else. So if Hosea is going to marry a prostitute, everyone will be talking about, can you believe Hosea, a prophet, married a prostitute? That's hard. That is very hard. That is not a fair request. But don't worry, I don't get mad until chapter 3. Go marry a prostitute and have children with her. For like an adulterous wife, this land is guilty of unfaithfulness to the Lord. All right, and we've seen this. Idolatry in the Old Testament poetically is likened to adultery. So that it is not that you are seeking out other gods, it is that you are cheating on God. Right? And if you think about it, you want to know what the future holds. And so you can pray, but then maybe you don't like God's not answering in time. You just want a quick answer. So maybe you call a psychic. Maybe you read your horoscope. Maybe you flip a coin. And what are you doing when you do those things? You are putting those things in the place of God. You are cheating on God. You're having an affair on God. So the illustration now that is being given is that God is married to this prostitute, and Hosea will be the example of that. He married Gomar, daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. Gomer means completion, so there is some wordplay here. We have salvation, we have completion. Gomer represents the end state of the Israelites. Hosea represents God's salvation and reaching out to them. Now, I will joke about this later in the week because of the place where I'm going this week. I'm going to Mongolia, where they tend to have very funny names for their children. Like a very common Mongolian name is Nerogui. It's a beautiful name. It's like as romantic as Klingon. Nerogui literally means no name. Right? You should name your child No Name so that the dark spirits don't attack No Name because he or she has so little value that you haven't given them a name. So I'm convinced that Hosea is a Mongolian prophet in the Old Testament. The Lord said to Hosea, call him Jezreel, because I will soon punish the house of Jehu for the massacre at Jezreel, and I will put an end to the kingdom of Israel. In that day I will break Israel's bow in the valley of Jezreel. So we need to understand the history here. Rehoboam, one of the kings of the northern kingdom, Jeroboam, one of the kings of the northern kingdom, the way he came to power, he came after one of the worst kings of the northern kingdom, a guy named Ahab. And so when he came to power, he slaughtered all the descendants. Right? We don't do that in our politic. It's not like if Trump wins in November, he'll kill off Hunter and all the other Bidens. We don't do that. We frown upon that. That is what this king of northern Israel did, and it's during a time of prosperity, but that was not something that pleased God. So Hosea names his first child Jezreel to remind the Israelites about what has taken place. Gomar conceived again and gave birth to a daughter. The Lord said to Hosea, call her Lo Rumaha, which means not loved. Now, how would you like that as a name? Here's my daughter, not loved. Now, people are paying attention to this because this is outside the norm. Not loved. Why not loved? I will no longer show love to Israel that I should at all forgive them. Yeah, I'll show love to Judah. I will save them, not by bow, sword, or battle, or by horses and horsemen, but I, the Lord their God, will save them. So this is while times are economically good in northern Israel, and Hosea is given this message, it's all going to fall apart. It will all fall apart. Now, we're not in economic good times. Every 100 days, the country's debt grows by $1 trillion. Every 100 days. So, $3.65 trillion a year in new debt. All right. Hosea would have been prophesying like during the days of Reagan. We're much further along into the decline of the empire. But when he says not loved, that's the illustration. God's saying, I'm done with Israel. After she weaned Lo Ramah, go. Yeah, you can say it however you want. Here's the trick, and I've learned this. Whatever part of the world you're in, you're going to say you're Hebrew with an accent. And so I've seen that with, if you say like Privyet, which means hello, and Russian or Ukrainian, depending what part of the country from, they'll correct you. Gomar had another son. The Lord said, call him Lo Ami, which means not my people. It's another indictment. For you are not my people, and I am not your God. Now, one of the commentators also adds speculation that maybe not my people is also not Hosea's son, because Gomar is a prostitute. We don't know. It's speculation. Yet, which means you're not my people, I'm not your God. So again, another indication God is writing off the Israelites. Yet, and we have this ray of hope in here, yet the Israelites will be like the sand on the seashore, which cannot be measured or counted. In the place where it was said to them, you are not my people, they will be called children of the living God. The people of Judah and the people of Israel will come together. They will appoint one leader and will come up out of the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel. Now, chapter 1, it ends on a happy note. But you see, I want to bring you to the last mention of Gomer. Because in between chapters 1 and 3, something has happened. Gomer's gone back to prostitution. Gomer has left the family. She's emasculated Hosea. She has put not just one man ahead. She hasn't just let one man interfere in the marriage and the family. She's put many men in between her and the family. And remember, everybody knows everything in this period of time. People are seeing who's going to the house when Hosea is not there. Maybe some of the neighbors say something to Hosea. Maybe they don't. But everyone knows. And in fact, it's gotten to the place where she's not just had the affair, she has left the house to go back to be a temple prostitute. In Hosea chapter 3, the Lord said to me, go show your love to your wife again, though she is loved by another man, and is an adulteress. Now, biblically, Hosea is off the hook. He never has to see this woman again. And why would he want to? With what she has done. Why would he? And just imagine the people saying, oh, he calls himself a prophet and look at what his wife is doing. Why would he want to go back? And it gets harder. Love her as the Lord loves the Israelites, though they turn to other gods and love the sacred raisin cakes. Yeah, so the Israelites, it's the brownies, it's the special treats. They keep being tempted away from God. And so God makes Hosea act out his forgiveness. Now, so I bought her for 15 shekels of silver and a homer and a lethek of barley. That word lethek only occurs once in the Bible. So translators have done different things with it. Some have said in a flagon of wine. Others have said a homer and a half of barley. NIV just left it as lethek. Best translation, considering the context, is a homer and a half. Here's why. A homer of barley would cost 10 shekels. Half a homer would be 15 shekels. 15 shekels and 15 shekels is 30 shekels. What do we know about 30 shekels of silver? Price for Jesus, it's the price for buying a slave. She's a temple prostitute. She's a sex slave. But here's the thing that's even harder about the passage now. Hosea doesn't have the money. He doesn't have the money. So he has to take half of the money in cash and bring in his crops, probably for the year, to buy his wife back. Then I told her, you are to live with me many days. You must not be a prostitute or be intimate with any man, and I will behave the same way toward you. And boy, as I'm reading that, I'm saying, why, Hosea, you don't have to promise her anything. She's in the wrong. I mean, she's way beyond being in the wrong. She has put so many things ahead of the marriage, ahead of the family. She's disgraced you. What are you doing? And then as I read that, it occurs to me what he is doing. He's renewing the wedding vows. She destroyed the marriage. He doesn't have the money to buy his wife back. He shouldn't have to buy his wife back, but he does. And then he renews the marriage vows. For the Israelites will live many days without king or prince, without sacrifice or sacred stones, without ephod or household gods. Afterwards, the Israelites will return and seek the Lord their God and David their king. They will come trembling to the Lord and to his blessings in the last days. How do you feel about Hosea 3 now, Aida? Do you hate it? Oh, it's so hard. It's so hard. But now let's personalize it. What is God calling on you to forgive? What hurts so much to think about that you just keep holding on to it? That's not God's model. God's willing to look past all of that and to restore relationships. And that's what we're called to do. It's a tough, tough chapter. But it's a challenge for us. It's a challenge to consider, what does God request of us? And how fitting we approach the communion table this morning. So we'll spend a minute in silent prayer, and then we'll prepare our hearts to approach the communion table.